On the morning of November 13th, 2022, a silence settled over Moscow. Not the kind students embraced after a long night out. But something heavier. Something is wrong. Inside that off-campus home, just a short walk from the University of Idaho, 4 young lives had been brutally taken. No gunshots. No cries loud enough to wake neighbors. No forced entry. Just a crime so vicious that by dawn, investigators understood immediately. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a drunken fight. This was a massacre. 6 weeks later, after one of the most complex investigations in Idaho history, police arrested a man, someone few in town expected. A criminology doctoral student. A man studying criminal behavior, now accused of committing one of the most savage crimes the region had ever seen. Moscow, Idaho, population roughly 26,000, a peaceful university town tucked against the Washington border. For decades, the worst crime many residents remembered was the occasional bar fight or property damage. But in November 2022, 4 students, 4 bright, hopeful lives were taken in a way this community still struggles to understand. Madison Maddie Mogan, 21, psychology major, known for her humor, loyalty, and radiant smile. A girl who made everyone feel like they belonged. Kaylee Goncalves, 21, sociology major, outspoken, adventurous, adored her car, Range Rover. She loved late-night food truck trips with friends. Xana Kernodle, 20, from Avondale, Arizona, independent, bold, playful, balancing studies with a full social life. Ethan Chapin, 20, triplet, business major, gentle-hearted, athlete, the kind of guy people described as everyone's friend. Maddie and Kaylee lived on the 3rd floor. Xana and Ethan occupied the 2nd. 2 more roommates slept on the 1st floor. It was a typical shared student home. Until the night it wasn't. To friends and family, the news was unthinkable. Not in Moscow. Not to kids this young. Not to people who had plans, graduation, travel, careers, the rest of their lives. And yet, what began as a weekend like any other, ended with 4 families facing a nightmare no parent or sibling is prepared for. They laughed, they ate, they celebrated the last stretch of the semester. By sunrise, all 4 were gone. November 12th, 2022. A Saturday night on campus, just weeks before Thanksgiving break. Students filled restaurants, bars, fraternity houses, living the carefree rhythm of college life. Maddie and Kaylee spent the night downtown. Dinner, then a stop at a food truck live-streamed online. They didn't know it, but those minutes would become crucial in reconstructing the final timeline. They ordered food, they talked to other students, paid, and just before 2 a.m., a ride took them home. Ethan and Xana were at a fraternity party across campus, surrounded by friends. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. By around 1:45 a.m., they returned to the rental home. Inside, 2 other roommates were already asleep on the 1st floor. And then, the timeline fractures. What happened between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. has been pieced together from digital data, camera footage, phone records, and eyewitness accounts. Not everything is public. Not everything is known. But what is known is chilling. Maddie and Kaylee were asleep on the 3rd floor. Xana and Ethan on the 2nd. 2 roommates below them, safe simply because the killer never went downstairs. At 4 a.m., neighbors later reported a faint dog bark. Kaylee's dog. Nothing unusual. Dogs bark. Minutes later, a nearby camera picked up something else. Not voices. Not furniture falling. Just 3 muffled impacts. The kind investigators believe were the first signs of the attack. One of the surviving roommates later reported opening her bedroom door after hearing a noise on the 3rd floor. What she saw was not chaos. Not screaming. Not a struggle. She saw a figure. Dressed in black. Face covered by a mask. Walking past her toward the sliding glass doors. She described hearing a voice, soft, male, saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Words investigators later said could belong to either the suspect or one of the victims in their final moments. Inside, 4 students were attacked with a fixed blade knife. Investigators said the strikes were fast, targeted, and overwhelming. There were defensive wounds. Some victims tried to fight back. But the attack was so sudden, so violent, that no one escaped. By 4:25 a.m., based on available evidence and cell tower gaps, the killer was gone. Around noon, one of the surviving roommates called friends to the house after finding something alarming on the second floor. Those friends then called 911 just before noon. What officers found inside left even seasoned investigators shaken. 4 victims, all in their rooms or nearby, all with multiple stab wounds. No sign of forced entry. No weapon left behind. The weapon, believed to be a large fixed-blade knife, was never recovered. But investigators found something else. A tan leather knife sheath, left behind on the bed next to one of the victims. The sheath would become the single most crucial piece of physical evidence in the case. Within hours, fear spread through Moscow. Dorms emptied. Lecture halls thinned. Some students went home for safety. Others refused to sleep alone. For 30 days, the town held its breath, knowing someone capable of unimaginable violence was still out there. The murders of 4 University of Idaho students launched one of the largest criminal investigations in the state's history. For days, investigators scrambled, piecing together clues that felt incomplete, fragile, and scattered across a digital and physical maze. In total, more than 15,000 tips would flood in. Everything from suspicious vehicles to sightings to students reporting strangers on campus. Most led nowhere. A few, however, began forming the faint outline of a suspect. Across multiple camera systems, investigators discovered something unusual. A white Hyundai Elantra, circling the neighborhood several times between 3:30 and 4:20 a.m. It wasn't speeding. It wasn't parking. It wasn't dropping someone off. It was circling, looping around the home in a pattern investigators described as consistent and suspicious. That car became a priority, an anchor point around which the entire investigation would slowly tighten. Investigators learned the killer likely carried a phone, one that mysteriously stopped connecting to networks at around 2:47 a.m., just outside Pullman, Washington. Then, at 4:48 a.m., the phone reconnected on a highway south of Moscow, right after the estimated time of the murders. It wasn't proof on its own, but it suggested movement. And more importantly, intent. Inside one of the bedrooms, investigators found a tan leather knife sheath. It held one detail the killer did not anticipate leaving behind: a DNA sample. The DNA didn't match anyone in the system. It was classified as unknown. But advanced forensic genealogy, the same method used to catch the Golden State Killer, found a familial match. Trash discarded by a man living there contained similar DNA. And investigators traced the match through family lines until a single name surfaced: Bryan Kohberger, 28 years old male, a criminology PhD student at Washington State University. Kohberger lived in Pullman, less than 8 miles from the crime scene. He was studying criminal behavior, profiling, forensic science, even teaching classes about identifying criminal offenders. And now investigators believed he might be one. Students who knew him described him as quiet, socially awkward, sometimes arrogant, often intense. He asked questions about the mind of a killer. He studied case files with unusual fixation. The deeper investigators looked, the more the digital evidence aligned. Kohberger's car, a white Hyundai Elantra, matched the surveillance footage. His phone had traveled near the victim's house at least 12 times before the murders, mostly late at night. Why? Investigators didn't have the answer. But the pattern suggested familiarity. or surveillance. On December 30th, 2022, after 6 weeks of fear and speculation, the FBI, Pennsylvania State Police, and local authorities surrounded a house in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Police lights reflect off frost-covered trees. Officers move with quiet precision. Inside was Kohberger, visiting his parents for the holidays. He was arrested without incident. He asked one question: "Has anyone else been arrested?" Investigators later said the question stood out, a stark, unsettling moment. As investigators compiled evidence, a clearer picture emerged. DNA linking him to the sheath, vehicle matches, cell tower data, prior visits to the neighborhood, possible sightings, behavioral patterns, and digital footprints investigators have not fully disclosed publicly. Kohberger was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. His defense challenged everything: the DNA, the genealogy process, the car analysis, the phone records. But the prosecution held firm. They argued the case was built not on a single clue, but a constellation of evidence, each part reinforcing the others. One question lingered above all else: why? Why this house? Why these students? Why such brutality? To this day, Kohberger has never provided an explanation. Not during the investigation. Not during interrogation. Not at his sentencing. And without motive, grief remains suspended. Open. Unresolved. After months of legal motions, hearings, and intense debate, the case of the Idaho student murders reached its resolution. But it was not through the dramatic trial many expected. It was through a plea. On July 23, 2025, Bryan Kohberger stood before Judge Stephen Hippler and entered a guilty plea to 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. In a soft, flat voice, Kohberger admitted he entered the home with a knife. He admitted he knew people were inside. And he admitted he killed them, deliberately, knowingly, intentionally. For the families, the confession was a double-edged blade. Relief that the legal battle was ending. An anguish that no explanation would come with it. Judge Hippler delivered his ruling with gravity. 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. 1 for each victim. Plus 10 years for burglary. And fines exceeding $270,000. In Idaho, the death penalty was on the table. But the plea deal saved the families from a years-long trial, appeals, delays, and the public dissection of their children's final moments. As Judge Hippler read statements describing each victim, their dreams, their passions, their lives, the courtroom shook with emotion. Some families spoke with fury. Others with heartbreak. Some asked the question that will forever go unanswered. Why? The town of Moscow changed after November 2022. The violence left shadows on a place that once felt protected, almost insulated. The rental home where the murders occurred was demolished in December 2023. At the request of the victims' families, and with the support of the University of Idaho. What once stood as a place of horror is now an absence. A silence. A reminder of the 4 lives cut short. The murders forced universities across the country to confront their vulnerabilities. In Idaho and beyond, schools re-examined. Security protocols, mental health systems, dorm access, emergency response procedures, off-campus housing risks. Pepper spray sold out in days. Alarm companies saw spikes in student orders. Parents demanded stricter monitoring. And some students left Moscow altogether. This case was not just a local tragedy. It became a national wake-up call. Despite the plea, the conviction, and the overwhelming forensic data, several key questions remain open. Kohberger has never explained his actions. Not to the police. Not to the court. Not to the families. not to anyone. Without motive, justice feels incomplete. The legal case is closed, but the emotional case remains wide open. The story of the Idaho student murders is not just about forensic breakthroughs or investigative triumph. It is about loss and the echo of that loss. 4 young lives ended before they had a chance to fully begin. 4 futures erased. 4 families forever altered. And yet, in the wake of horror, a community found unity. Students looked after each other. Neighbors opened their homes. Strangers donated, volunteered, and stood vigil. For universities everywhere, this case became a question. Is safety just walls and locks? Or is it the conversations we avoid? The risks we underestimate? The behaviors we ignore? And for those who study criminology, the line between observers and participants sits uneasily in the shadows of this case. In the end, justice was delivered. But peace, real peace, remains something the families must search for in the years to come. The weight of their loss is immeasurable. The impact on their community is unforgettable. And the memory of Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan will endure far beyond the walls of any courtroom. Thank you for watching Silent Evidence: True Crime Exposed. If you found this story compelling, please like, subscribe, and join us next time for another chilling exploration of crime, truth, and memory.